We are commemorating the Anti-Corruption Week that climaxes on December 9th. The latest Corruption Perceptions Index reported by Transparency International puts Uganda in the 151st position among 175 least corrupt nations. Uganda scored only 26 points out of 100. The Inspectorate of Government is a constitutional body mandated under Chapter 13 of the 1995 Constitution of the Republic of Uganda to promote good governance, fight corruption, and enforce the Leadership Code of Conduct. It has the power to investigate, cause investigation, arrest, prosecute, or cause prosecution in respect to cases involving corruption. Tonight on The Spot, we interrogate some of the interventions by the various anti-corruption agencies on whether or not they have yielded fruit. And my guests this evening are Justice Irene Mulyagonja, the IGG, Mrs. Keto Nyampendi Kayemba, Assistant Auditor General, and Mr. Patrick Mwebaze, Executive Director of Uganda Debt Network. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for honoring our invitation. A warm welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Let me begin with you, my Lord Justice Irene Mulyagonja. If we talk about fighting corruption, how much has been achieved in the fight against graft in Uganda?
I will talk about, first of all, we have a framework that we use in fighting corruption.
Yes.
The United Nations Convention Against Corruption requires every state party to do certain things. One of them, first and foremost, is to set in place the laws that are required to fight that vice. We are also required to have institutions that will enforce the laws that have been put in place by Parliament. And then, of course, there's got to be funding for the fight against corruption. So on the first two, we have the laws, and we have a good legal framework, which starts in the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, which establishes the Office of the Inspector General of Government, establishes the Office of the Auditor General, the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, and the courts. Those are the vital institutions that we use in the fight against corruption. But also the laws that we have are some of the best on this continent to fight corruption. Because when you look at the Anti-Corruption Act, it provides almost all those offenses that are envisaged by the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Then you look at things like how we do our procurement, how we do taxes in Uganda. We have a very strong tax body. Then we have the Office of the Auditor General for accountability. Most of the requirements of UNCAC have been fulfilled by Uganda. So we have a very good framework. I think that is a great achievement.
Yeah, but when you look at the corruption indices by Transparency International, we score so poorly. Out of 150-something countries, we are among those, we are at the bottom. So you have the institutions, you have the laws, you have the people to fight corruption, but graft is still there, and it's so evident.
I think we have to look at the countries that are at the top and compare them to the countries that are at the bottom. We need to understand what brings about the difference in the perceptions of whether there is corruption still existent in a nation or not. When you look at our developing countries and compared to the countries in the West that are more developed than we are, you will see that social services are no longer a big issue for them. For instance, let me just give you one example. Look at housing, for example. Compare Uganda to one of those countries that are at the top in the fight against corruption in terms of housing. Housing for the people that are entitled to housing, because it is a human right for a person to have shelter. Compare the two. Compare Uganda, say, and Sweden in terms of housing.
But the issue of corruption, Justice Mulyagonja, is more about values and not real wealth.
I don't think
so. And values should be everywhere, no matter how much you earn.
Patrick, I think if I said corruption is just about values, I would be lying to myself. There is different kinds of corruption. There is the corruption which we say is out of greed, and then there is corruption which is out of need. Now, when you look at perceptions of corruption and look at the institutions that are highest in Uganda in terms of saying they are some of the institutions where corruption is known to take place, and consider who is really participating in this corruption, you will see that sometimes
but the
it's
people
really
who have subjected a lot of damage to Uganda
need.
are those who are corrupt out of greed.
You may say so, but in terms of numbers, when a person does a perception study about where corruption is most, and I will talk about, for instance, the bribery index, and where it identifies corruption to be, it's a corruption of need. Then you have the other corruption, which is a corruption, which is grand corruption, and which is considered to be corruption which arises out of greed, where a person who actually has more than most people is participating in corruption. So before
I bring in here Mrs.
Need.
Keto Nyampendi, one would want to know, you as somebody who sits there and it's your job really to ensure maybe you have fought corruption and have people convicted, would want to know how many convictions have you had maybe in the last couple of years, and how much money have you been able to recover as IGG?
The Inspectorate of Government, I will talk about the statistics for the last 3 years. We prosecuted 142 public officials, and out of those 142 public officials prosecuted, 99 were convicted, which amounts to about 67% of those prosecuted being convicted. And there are some high-profile cases. For instance, we have cases related to the Ministry of Local Government, cases related to the Uganda National Roads Authority, including that one of Mukono Katosi, which was one of the most famous cases that we've prosecuted. And then we have big investigations that are still going on. Especially in the Ministry of Local Government, there are many big investigations still going on, and which we hope we will be able to bring some fresh prosecutions. In addition to prosecution, there's also been some recovery of funds that were lost. Over the last 3 years, we were able to recover 1.985 billion, but the most important thing which I think we achieved was to save losses of money. We were able to save government a loss of 107 billion Uganda shillings over a period of 3 years.
Okay, there have been, okay now, Mrs. Keto Nyampendi, you are the Assistant Auditor General. You look through the books of accounts of the different entities of public resources, and the Inspector General of Government has been able to prosecute about 99, I mean, no, 142 and get 99 convictions and recover 1.8 something billion. When you look into the books of account, do you think, how would you appraise their job in terms of recovering money and the convictions, because you know the rot inside?
You mean how do we appraise the Inspector General of Government?
Yeah, if I'd ask you to find out, because they have put the figures, this is what they have been able to do, but you know how deep the rot is.
That's good. I think we work with them. We work with them as sister organizations in the fight against corruption. I think we would state that they're doing very well. Corruption is not a simple thing to handle. It is not a concept that you can talk about and think you can touch. You have concepts of grand corruption, petty corruption, concepts of how you look into the corruption and what is it exactly that you're looking for. So according to me, the Inspector General is doing a good job. She has ensured that her office is well set out, that they can go even to the extent of recovery. I think we should applaud them for that, because not many offices have managed to get those convictions made. From the Office of the Auditor General's point of view, we come out with reports, we share these reports with them, and we are so busy with them, getting in as much as we can to them, and they getting out as much as they can from the flags that we blow out to them. So I think they're doing very well. And our job is to support them as much as possible.
Okay, Mr. Patrick, I remember during the Black Monday campaign, and somehow you said, as a civil society organization, that this country was losing almost 500 billion Uganda shillings. Some people even put it at 900 billion. And of course, the Inspector General of Government, including the Auditor General, saying, well, at least the fight is there, they're doing a good job. And they have given us the figures. 1.85 billion has been recovered, and 199
107 billion.
Yes, has
saved.
been recovered. 107 billion saved. How would you look at that from your corner?
I think from the civil society point of view is that, yeah, the institutions of government are doing a good job. The IG, the police, the Auditor General, the police, everybody is doing a good job. But the problem that we're seeing as civil society is that we seem to think that there's no that political will to facilitate these organs to be able to do their job as it should be. I would think that, for example, the Inspector General of Government should be having a representative at every sub-county. I don't think they do have that one, because corruption is everywhere, on every single point in Uganda. So to us, yes, they are doing a good job, but still more is yet to be done. And this is supposed to be looked at the apex, at the political level. We have seen situations of political patronage that are going around, and we think that's not a good thing, and that could be one of the reasons that maybe is impeding the fight about corruption.
But what I have come to realize, Mr. Tumebas, is that it's not really the political heads or the politicians who are handling money. Money is being handled by the technical people, the civil servants themselves, because...
I think let's give this a historical perspective.
Yes.
Corruption. Corruption, I mean, those who read the Bible, started with the Bible. There are so many that you can quote in the Bible. But pre-colonial days, we used to have chieftaincies, rulers, and all that. They used to have, they didn't have a stipend. And they would use, you know, what would be brought to them, that was then in the open. And it became a culture from there on. If you go on the colonial era, they were using certain tribes to fight the others, and for their own, you know, purposes. This has been enshrined in the people's minds and has become a culture. And I think that's one of the reasons corruption is so hard to fight. We can talk, we can make noise, we can, you know, have systems, laws in place, but this is a culture. It is a cancer within the population.
I know the president at one time criticized some of those who are fighting corruption that maybe hadn't done according to what is expected of you. In fact, he appointed a gentleman in the name of Tweheyo to be one of those who would, you know, work with you. I wonder, have you been in coordination with the Tweheyo group, Justice Irene Muliagonja?
I want to state that I have not had any opportunity to work with Mr. Tweheyo and his other colleagues that were announced when the State of the Nation address was made by His Excellency the President. Actually, they have not been introduced to us as an institution. So we do not know how they operate or where they operate.
But the appointing authority appointed you and appointed him, and I suppose you're supposed to coordinate. This is surprising that since the State of the Nation address, you have not actually had any coordination or meeting. So that sounds strange, doesn't it?
It's not strange to me, because the very manner in which they were appointed left a lot of doubt as to what the intention was. So it's not strange that we have not heard from them.
Yes.
Maybe I would say that the president is going to is going to address the nation on Monday on anti-corruption activities, and I believe that that fora would enable the anti-corruption bodies to interact and interface with the president, and the intentions that he had at the State of the Nation address.
You know, just a couple of days ago, I think it was yesterday but one, the president accused officials in the anti-corruption agencies of corruption. In fact, I think I have a clip which I could ask my producer to play, because this is just like a day or 2 days ago. And now if they have put people, men and officers to coordinate, and you're not coordinating, then I think a lot more needs to be done. And so let me ask my producer to get me that clip. If he doesn't, we can still continue other things, then I can get it.
But I think
Mr.
Patrick,
Kamara, you talked about Tweheyo and the other two people who were announced on the State of the Nation address.
Yes.
There was also another appointment that was made when His Excellency addressed the nation on the state of security in the country, where he said he was appointing Lieutenant Colonel Edith Nakalema to work with him on anti-corruption matters. And the Inspectorate of Government has, Lieutenant Colonel Nakalema has been introduced to us, not just to the Inspectorate of Government, but also to the Office of the Auditor General, the DPP, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Authority, and also police.
So this has been an effective reinforcement to you.
Yes, we feel it's a
let me now pick that clip. I think that happened about 2 days ago. The president accusing officials in the anti-corruption agencies of corruption. So listen to this.
The laws are there, the institutions are there, but the personnel manning those institutions are the problem now. But fortunately, people are fed up, so they can no longer protect these.
Okay, so the laws are there, the institutions are there, but the personnel manning those institutions, including the Auditor General, is part of the job as well. So the chief executive, when he says something like that, in this week of, you know, when we're trying to fight corruption, what do you pick from there? Justice Irene.
Well, I am waiting for His Excellency to tell us how we are a problem, because every year we are given a budget to fight corruption as Inspectorate of Government. Unfortunately, that budget is just not for fighting corruption alone. It is for three things. A portion of it is for fighting corruption. A portion is for the ombudsman role. Another portion is for the supervision of implementation of the Leadership Code Act.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me also.
So, and every year we go back to Parliament with results of what we have done with those resources that we have been given, and every year we go back and ask for more money, and it is given to us. So if our personnel are the problem, we will wait to see whether it is the personnel that are the problem or whether there is something else that
okay, but let me also bring you another clip, because I think somebody thinks probably the politicians are also playing lip service. And if I got Dr. Delia Ferreira correctly, Chairperson Transparency International, thinks there's a lot of lip service when it comes to the politicians. So let me ask my producer again to get me that clip very briefly of Dr. Delia Ferreira. Okay, as they try to look for that, because I just wanted maybe to make it it looks like there was a ping pong of a suggestion, because if the politicians are saying this and then the civil society is also saying the other. So let us hear Dr. Ferreira, what she's saying.
President that assumed office says in his speech, "I commit to fight corruption." Everyone said that. Really, we as citizens in the global world are fed up with commitments. Because my impression is that they know very clearly what corruption is, but they are not aware of what commitment means in terms of the ethical and value point of view.
Dr. Ferreira now is talking about the politicians. They are committed to fight corruption, but they don't go further in trying to walk the talk. What would you make of that, Mr. Patrick Numerozi?
I think let's look at our politics. the elective politics we have now is that it is a politics of poverty. I would call it that way. I mean, you find they have commercialized the politics in the sense that the people are actually bought to vote for somebody. Now, my thinking is that the politicians, once they get into the offices, they tend to now start looking at how do they cover the costs that actually incurred, meanwhile they were in elections. So at that time, they don't be accountable to the very people who elected them, but they tend to be accountable to any other kind of aspect, which I would think is to really recover their losses that they made. That's what I would say.
Mrs. Nyampendi, when you, as Assistant Auditor General, you look into the books of accounts for the different entities of government, and sometimes you find the road, and you, of course, submit your report to Parliament, and we have seen Public Accounts Committee and COSASI and all that using your report to debate and to do a few things. But sometimes, are you frustrated by the fact that almost every year you almost find the same things, and sometimes you also give recommendations, and the recommendations are not acted upon?
We do get frustrated, yes. We do get frustrated. But I must say that when you see the improvements that is happening, when you see that your recommendations, Parliament takes your recommendations, almost 80–90% of recommendations, and requests the executive to ensure that they handle those recommendations. Then when you see the executive reacting to them to a certain degree, I must appreciate that you feel a bit enlightened, a bit happy about it. You get frustrated about the 50% that is not okay. We have audited some treasury memorandums and come out with a 30–30–30 ratio, where 30 of our recommendations were implemented, 30 not implemented, 30 partially implemented. So I think I'm one of those who looks at the good. As Patrick said, this is poverty. There's too much poverty in the country. So when you look at you having moved 30% in the corruption level, trying to ensure that people implement the recommendations you have, then you get a bit happy, but you still stay quite frustrated, I must.
Justice Irene Mulyagonja, you have recovered about almost 2 billion from those who are corrupt. Does that mean, did you have to sell their property, or people really stashed this money somewhere, and then when you cornered them, then they brought back that money? Somebody would want to know.
Now, what happens at the Inspectorate of Government is we prosecute cases of those suspected of having lost money or embezzled or stolen from the coffers of government. Recoveries from prosecution are usually got at the beginning of the prosecution, before people expend the money. And usually it is, agreements are sometimes reached, plea bargaining, where the suspect agrees to bring back the money, and then you forego prosecution in favor of recovery. But what we do in such cases is we do not allow them to stay in office. If you return money, it means you had taken the money, taken it unlawfully. We insist that you leave office. So those are most of the recoveries. But sometimes there are also administrative actions that we take after carrying out an investigation where a person cannot be prosecuted. We request them, or we order them to return the money that they had taken, and over time we recover those amounts. Like the 1.9 is over a period of 3 years. Sometimes we recover more. In some financial years, we've been able to recover up to 1.2 billion, sometimes 800 million, and so on. But it's a very slow process. If you go through the whole process of prosecution, for the court to order a person, an official, to refund monies that they had stolen, yes, you will get the order. But in most cases, they have already spent the money, and you will not be able to recover it from them. And the shortcoming of prosecution in order to recover money is that in most cases, they've already spent it. And in the process of investigation and prosecution, where they hire lawyers, the lawyers are paid a lot of money. So by the time you complete the prosecution, there's nothing left for the person to return. So we have hundreds of orders requiring people to refund money to government, but you can't execute them because there's nothing to execute against.
Okay. Justice Irene Mulyagonja, Mrs. Nyapendi, and Mr. Patrick Mwebazi, we are going to take a break. We'll come back and dig deep into this issue. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara, and my guests tonight are Justice Irene Mulyagonja, Mrs. Keto Nyapendi Kayemba, Assistant Auditor General, and Patrick Mwebazi, Executive Director, Uganda Debt Network. In this segment, let me begin with you, Patrick, because how can ordinary Ugandans be incorporated in the fight against corruption so that it's the people who are involved, so that if you have sent money at the sub-county, you have people, like a vibrant citizenry that understand money has come for the road, for the health sector, for the health center, and then they can make the people account for every penny.
Thank you, Patrick. I think to start with, we need to look at the budget transparency because that's where the resources are. I know we do research, OBI, Open Budget Index, and Uganda is doing well in terms of budget transparency index. But the question is, to what extent is it, transparent? Because the local people, when they talk about the transparency in the budget, they talk about we publish our things on online and so forth. So who has internet in the villages and all that? So what I'm trying to say is that. Yes, we need to have these people empowered in the sense that they understand the budget before even, we have these consultations and all that, but I still have a problem with those. And they say, see, the budget process is participatory, but prior to the consultations and also after the consultations, nothing happens. So we think the people at the grassroots should be empowered in the first place. Of course, understandably, these people are poor in mind, in economical and so forth. And it's a bit difficult for them to engage meaningfully. But I have a very good example. The other day, last week, I was in Botswana and I was attending the AU meeting on corruption. And some professor from Rwanda who was representing President Kagame, called Professor Shaka, told us what they are doing. I think we could borrow a leaf. They have a certain session in Parliament, which is chaired at that time by the President himself. And then they have open lanes, which is known by the local people in the grassroots and so forth. So people call in and ask, there was a promise on this road. How comes it is not there? We have some semblance of it in Uganda, but it stops at district level. So we need to reach at that level. But they would be able to call if they know how much you're planned for. So the planning process also, they should be very much involved, and then they know what to monitor.
Yeah, I think there's something called like Ask Your Government, and I attended one of those conferences where people were, they could sit in different places and call in or tweet and send messages, and even in the conference themselves ask those questions now. And I think perhaps that's what Justice Irene Mulyagonja would want to have, a vibrant citizenry that is, they understand their responsibilities but can also demand for better.
Yes, the Inspectorate of Government has participated in some programs where we empower citizens to demand for accountability. And a good example of those is the Northern Uganda Social Action Fund 2 program, which was taking place in 55 districts of Uganda, in Northern Uganda, where we received funds, government of Uganda received funds from the World Bank to the tune of $100 million and 30 million British pounds to rehabilitate institutions, roads, health centers in northern Uganda. Now, the Inspectorate of Government was brought on board in this Northern Uganda Social Action Fund program to ensure accountability in a program known as the Transparency, Accountability and Anti-Corruption component of NUSAF 2. Using civil society organizations, including Uganda Debt Network, including CBOs and CSOs, other CSOs on the ground, the inspectorate trained communities to demand for accountability. And it was very effective. The program was so effective in that at the end of the 5 years of expending that money in those 55 districts, the implementers of the program, who started from the community level going up to the local governments, were able to account for 99.8% of the funds.
Almost 100.
99.8% of the funds for that program. And even on the ground, there was evidence that this money had really been expended on the needs of the people, and that infrastructure had been built, roads, schools, health centers. There was also a community development project where livelihoods of families were improved using this
So
project.
that is clearly a working model. So why can't that working model be taken all over? For example, inspect or look at the USMID, where they're building municipalities, because the 9 municipalities or more have been given money, I think, from the African Development Bank and World Bank to construct roads all over.
Yes.
So why don't you translocate that to other parts of
the
Uganda?
Inspectorate of Government really wishes to have a similar program all across the country, and we have actually participated or are participating in USMID. There's also a program for USMID is a program again for infrastructure.
Yes.
But there's also the Refugee Response Program, which has just started, which is called the Dr. DIP, Development Response to Displacement Impact Program. We are also participating in that by ensuring that communities that are beneficiaries of this program participate in demanding for accountability to see that the programs that have been planned for them are actually implemented. So we want to translocate this, as you say, and we want to interest government and the people of Uganda in the notion that the best person to fight corruption, as our constitution provides in Article 26, is the Ugandan. You and me are the best people to fight corruption by watching out for programs that for which we are beneficiary, and ensuring that those programs are implemented properly for our benefit.
Mrs. Nyapendi, is it not very difficult? Because sometimes people who have gotten public resources, we're talking about billions of shillings, and that money can be used for them to insulate themselves against the prosecution, but also they can use the same money to compromise investigating officers.
Yes, they can try to do that. But I think if you have codes of ethics in your institutions, if you have the tone at the top in your institutions, if you've laid down proper structures that help you in managing your staff to try and guard against corruption within the institution, and try to ensure that your people don't get compromised as easily, then I think you're trying to put in place a good institution, and I think that is what we have tried to do. In our case, in terms of relationship with civil society and relationship with the citizenry, we agree entirely with what Lady Justice has stated. That is what we want. We want the people to get more active. We have whistleblowers who usually give us a lot of information, and they feed into our information. They feed into the audits that we do, the risks as assessed, and how we plan our audits and how we execute our audits. We also have different channels that the public can get to us through the email, through phones, to ensure that we get more information about what they need us to do.
Okay. I understand we have the leadership code, right? And the politician leaders are supposed to declare their wealth. Yes. But I'm wondering whether that also goes beyond that individual, maybe to their spouses and their children, because they can have the money, they can hide it in the name of their spouses. So what happens in that case?
We had a leadership code before its amendment in 2017, where it was mandatory for leaders to declare who their spouses are and their children below the age of 18 years and any property that they own. When the leadership code was amended in 2017, that provision was removed and a more nebulous provision was replaced to say that you declare the property in which you have interest as a leader. Now, when you talk about interest as a lawyer, interests are of varied kinds. If I don't have interest in my spouse's property as a legal concept, I then would not have to declare it. But then that means also that you are allowing me to acquire property and put it wholly in the names of my spouse, and then nobody will ask any questions as to how that property was acquired. So that has left a gap that can be exploited.
So what you're telling us that the leadership code is actually not helping much?
It will not help much in its current form. But the previous form that we had, the previous code, was made it mandatory for people to declare.
But assuming it was even the previous code, do you have the capacity to verify as IGG, the personnel, to go everywhere and find out this man owns something in Kanungu and Kisoro, in Koboko and in Kenyojo? Do you have that capacity?
The Inspectorate of Government used to carry out only 50 verifications until we introduced the online declaration system where every leader is required to declare their income, assets and liabilities online. We entered all the information that we had got before that, before 2016-17, into the system. So now whoever enters their information into the system, it can be verified by looking at what you declared before quite easily using computers. So right now we are able to verify 300. This financial year we are verifying
it's
300.
A drop in the ocean, isn't it?
300 leaders out of 250, up from 50, because it was 50 before. Now it is 300. Now, why don't we verify more? The staff of the Inspectorate of, I have had complaints about delays in the work of the Inspectorate of Government, that the Inspectorate of Government is very slow in its investigations. Yes, we would like to be faster, but speed also requires that we have the necessary human resources. If you are dealing with a population of 40 million and you have more than 120 local governments and they are under your jurisdiction, and in addition you have the whole of central government, then you have the whole of parliament, and you have a staff of 400, and only 250 of those can carry out investigations, you do a kind of juggling act. So you cannot have, in the Directorate of Leadership Code that does verifications, we don't have more than 20 people in that directorate. So you have 25,000 leaders declaring, and you want these about 30 people to carry out those verifications. It is almost impossible. It is a feat that cannot be achieved.
Mrs. Nyampendi, do you think what would help is the proposal I've had for a lifestyle audit of public officials? Some of them are really living, they're really in opulence.
A lifestyle audit would definitely help, but I must say that that is really the IGG who would know how to do a lifestyle audit. It's something that we would have to get to understand how to carry out a lifestyle audit. We are used to financial audits and value for money audits and IT audits. But yes, we would look at it, but I think that is really the IGG to.
My Lord, what do you make of that?
That is very true. We are the ones that have the capacity, the knowledge, the know-how to do a lifestyle audit. But unless we have the necessary resources to do, it takes about 5 million shillings to audit one leader's assets and liabilities. 5 million, one leader, but 25,000 declare. So now if you are going to verify all the 25,000, first of all, you will need people to go to the ground, because our verification, when you're actually carrying out a verification that goes into really going to the ground, you must
who is the lowest political leader would you want to declare their wealth, and then we want to investigate?
The law requires every head of department to declare. Every head of department, up to the level of head of department in every public institution.
And would you also spend 5 million on a person, on that kind of official?
If you are going, when you are verifying assets, it depends on where the assets are. Now, if I am I have assets. If I have assets in Kampala, I have assets in Bundibujo, I have assets in Mbarara. A person has got to go and look for all those assets. And remember, in Uganda, most people's assets are actually land. Now, if I am going to look for, sometimes you have a leader who has up to 10 pieces of land, and they are not in one place, and they are not titled. So when you are carrying out a verification, you must get the means to go to these pieces of land physically to see whether this leader is actually declaring what is on the land or not, and whether that land exists or not, and what size it is that is declaring, whether it is 5 acres or 2 miles or 2 square kilometers. You need to do that verification, and that's why it takes an enormous amount of money to carry out those declarations.
I think, Patrick, I would just add that if the IG is doing risk audits and looking only at people or areas which are risky, I think the public should appreciate that, because as she's saying, having to audit everybody is not something that can be done. I think it is about identifying the risky people that she needs to audit at any one time, and I would believe that what they are doing right now in auditing that would suffice, because we are a poor country. We cannot afford to go into the kind of, we cannot fund the issue of complete audit of all.
So there are people who would want to give you information in form of whistleblowers, but also they want to be protected, but also sometimes they want to be compensated, because if they have served government loss of colossal sums of money, those people's lives can be in danger. But also they have done a good act that needs to be compensated. I wonder how you're dealing with that.
I would love to compensate those who give us information, but the law provides that compensation is only done if a recovery is made after you have blown the whistle. Now, in most cases, the whistle is blown, but I can only give you what I have recovered. We have a lot of orders where a court has ordered people to refund monies to government. But those orders, by the time they are given by the court, there is nothing you can recover, because these people have already expended the monies, and sometimes they don't even have any assets that you can attach to recover the money. So if I don't recover as Inspector General of Government, I have nowhere to take the money from to give them the 5% that the law provides for. That is an issue that we would like to see. We would like to see our whistleblowers protected. We would also like to see our witnesses protected. But if we don't have that in the budgets and we don't recover physically, then we cannot compensate.
Mr. Tumeweza, as Uganda Debt Network, are you able perhaps to compute and tell us how much we lose, let's say, the cost of corruption?
You know, corruption has gone into different dimensions now. We have the normal corruption we know, and now a new dimension of illicit financial fraud, for example, has come up. The latest report I have, for example, on illicit financial frauds, which is as a result of misinvoicing, is about 4.7 trillion for a period of about $4.7 billion for a period of about 2005 to 2015. That is only on imports, but also on exports is about, for the same period, is about 1.7 billion. Now, of course, from our area engagement on Black Monday, we lose a lot cross-off annually, over 500 billion, you know, estimated. So it is a very serious matter. Yeah.
That serious matter, it appears, Justice Irene Muliagonja, is even embedded nowadays in our way of life, as if it is part and parcel of the lifestyle. So it's like whenever during the fight of HIV and AIDS in the 80s, there's something they called Hydra. It looks like Hydra that is all over. How on earth would you get it out? Because it's almost embedded and fused into the society.
We are proposing several things in this fight against corruption. We become more and more innovative, and as we interact with our colleagues from different jurisdictions, we learn more about what they've done. We have heard that, for instance, countries like Hong Kong, where corruption was at an all-time high some years ago, countries like Malaysia, countries like, you know, the Asian tigers that have managed to do some substantial work in taming corruption, they benefited a lot from education programs, massive education and awareness raising programs among the people of their countries. We think that if you bring the citizens in to fight corruption, so that you and I say no to corruption, everybody says no to corruption, the one who is supposed to give the bribe says, I will not give the bribe, and the receiver of the bribe also undertakes not to receive the bribe, and we as citizens open our eyes very wide to see where the corruption is, we may make some gains, because the most successful programs on anti-corruption have not been about prosecution, arrest, investigate, prosecute, arrest, because you can do very little in that way. The best programs are programs where corruption is prevented before it happens. So we need to be looking at more at the proactive methods of prevention of corruption than depending entirely on investigating and arresting and prosecuting.
Briefly, Mr. Nyampendi, before we take a break, just picture this. We, who have children, you know, and they are in school, we want them to get a D distinction. One, suppose in some cases they don't even deserve. We want them to get an A. They have nothing to show for it. And sometimes they even go on and reach and finish school. But when you look back and you compare the product of today and the product of the 60s or 70s when they're leaving school, there's such a remarkable difference in terms of being analytical, of the integrity, of understanding the concepts and all these kind of things. So it has gone into the education system as well.
Yes, it's unfortunate that it has gone into the education system. And I think a lot of us, as parents, as families, I think corruption has to be taken home. The fight against corruption has to be taken home. It is about the values that we teach our children, the virtues that we instill in them, how we ensure that as they grow through the education system, they are growing upright. So when you talk about corruption in the education system, it is sometimes unfortunate when you hear about the cheating of exams and, you know, your children come and tell you that, oh, the exams were being cheated, and you're like, but what's happening in Uganda? So it has to go down into the value system, into how we teach our children, how the teachers behave, how the schools behave, how the Ministry of Education addresses the ethical issues. I think the Minister of Integrity and how they address the integrity issues, we have to look back into that and understand how we are going to handle this hydra, as you call it.
Maybe the phoenix. Sometimes you kill it and it rises from the ash.
Yes.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'll open the line so that you too can be a part of this discussion. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara, and my guests tonight are Justice Irene Muliagonja, the IGG, Mrs. Keto Nyapendi Kayemba, Assistant Auditor General, and Patrick Tumweba's Executive Director, Uganda Debt Network. I understand, my lord, that you have a 5-year strategic plan against corruption, something like that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, what is it exactly?
The Inspectorate of Government has 3 main functions. That is, ensuring strict adherence to the rule of law in public administration, and the observance of the rules of natural justice, or the principles of natural justice. Secondly, to supervise the enforcement of the Leadership Code Act. That is the second level of the second limb, or rather the second point in our strategic plan. Then the other one is to enforce the Leadership Code Act. So we need to strengthen how the Leadership Code Act is enforced in Uganda. Then the other one is educating the public on the programs of the Inspectorate of Government and about corruption and anti-corruption, and also empowering Ugandans in understanding the Constitution and what it provides for. The fifth strategy of the Inspectorate of Government is strengthening the Inspectorate and making it more effective and efficient in the implementation of its mandate, which is a constitutional mandate. Those are the 5 strategic objectives of the Inspectorate of Government in its strategic plan 2016-2020.
Okay, the big thing that has been happening in the last couple of days is the probe by COSASE of the Bank of Uganda officials. And at one point, you wanted to investigate Bank of Uganda. You had your own ping pong of talk between yourself and the Bank of Uganda governor. How did it end?
Actually, the Inspectorate of Government participated in a probe of the Bank of Uganda in its recruitment of staff and promotions. The probe was, of course, led by the parliamentary committee,
yes,
that is COSASE. The report is yet to be issued, but I can assure you that the investigation or the probe was still carried out.
Okay, and it is the forensic audit that was done by the Auditor General that's really causing a stir. And at one point I was reading that, for example, Crane Bank or some banks were sold without following the procedures.
Yes. I think there were lots of issues that were brought up. We have not looked at Bank of Uganda in relation to its liquidation role at all before, and therefore this was the first time. And I think a lot of things came up. Given the fact that it is something that has taken a very long time, a lot of documentation is not there. Things that you may want to see. So when we talk about not following the right procedure, in a number of instances, they just could not give us the information that we wanted in relation to understanding the process and seeing that they have the necessary guidelines to guide the process of liquidation. I think the case in point is guidelines of identifying the persons to purchase to purchase banks closed, issues of valuation of assets and liabilities, issues of delays in liquidation. I mean, we have Tefe Bank, which has taken a very, very long time, which has not yet been wound up. So there are issues that the bank, unfortunately, had not done well, and they've had to face COSASE on it. And I think something good will come out of this whole thing, and it will put the bank at a different level. It's going to be able to scrutinize itself in all its functions, not only the financial function that we've been looking at, but there are other functions as well, such that it cleans up and it ensures that people are accountable for what they do, for the functions that they carry out for this country. I think we are going to come out with a lot. That
you're talking about coming out with a lot, Mr. Tumwebaze. If you wash your dirty linen in public, you have people who have yet to make their final investment decision in this country, especially in the Albertine Graben. Isn't that really likely to take our risk profile so high that people can say, Uganda is no go area for me?
Oh yeah, I think you are right, because they tend to fear, of course, if there's a lot of such kind of things coming up, corruption is coming up, investigations of such kind of, serious institutions, the investors definitely fear. They would want to put money where they think it is low risk. So I think we need to clean our house. But also, I think it's a good thing, especially for the Auditor General, to have done that, because you stop the situation before it becomes so worse. Maybe it would even be worse. And I think that is very good. So we can swallow the pain now, but maybe later, once we're cleared our house, then the investors will come back.
And I would want to hear your take, my lord. Such a probe, would it, in the end of the day, maybe not scare but embolden a would-be investor, say, let me go in this economy, because it seems that they are a no-nonsense group because they are not covering up anything, perhaps, from that perspective?
My understanding of what investors want is they want to have systems in place, checks and balances. They want to see justice done. They want to see systems of accountability that work. If there's a system of accountability in Uganda that can call the Bank of Uganda to order, it means there are strong systems of accountability in this country. And I think that we are to be uploaded.
But there's also a culture of impunity in Uganda.
We are to be uploaded. If there is impunity and we are tackling the impunity, then it is a good sign. Because if we had been complacent and said, because the governor of the bank is calling up provisions of the Constitution and saying the inspectorate cannot enter the Bank of Uganda to carry out an investigation, then that would be questionable. It would be questionable because the provisions that bring these institutions
actually initially that's what he said.
Are also in
initially
the
that's what he told you.
But the battle was won in that right now, not only has the bank been taken to task over its recruitment processes, but it has also been taken to task on more stringent measures of managing the economy, closure of banks. And I think that's a very positive step.
Yes, so according to me, it's unfortunate that this has happened, but I believe that we are on the road to a better state. Given that the country is growing, we are going to get more money. I think it's better it happened now rather than later. Exactly. And as the justice is saying, given that it has happened, then the investors know that we are an accountable country. We are no nonsense country. And when they come in, should anything go wrong, it will come out before it goes wrong.
I can hear some voices of people maybe who would say, couldn't they, why do they have to go for liquidation? Couldn't they maybe have appointed a manager who can manage it and not just liquidate it? Look up for some of these banks are indigenous Ugandan banks. And also, couldn't they maybe have had a discussion with the shareholders? Probably they had a plan to look for money, so least good money anywhere, and maybe inject it in the bank and save it?
I would say I don't have the facts
to
make that decision or to make that comment now. We need to wait for the report of the committee that is investigating this. Then we will have the real facts on the table and make that decision, whether they had to close the banks or they should have waited.
Okay, let me open the lines. Maybe I can have one or two people to participate in this discussion. You tell us where you're from, your name, and please keep it precise and concise. So let me take the first call online. Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I am calling from Bukedea.
From Bukedea?
Yes.
What's your name? What's your name, sir?
The IDB are selected in the studio.
Yes.
I want to appreciate her. She's a very good woman. Eh?
Okay.
But the problem is she's left in the job.
She's left in her...
She's left in her work. She let other branches like the branches in eastern Uganda, Soroti, Gulu, wire people to play with their office.
Okay, you're a very clever man because you soften the blow by first praising her and then you bring it. But she has heard you. Let me try to take. Hello.
But the branches she opened, the branches the government put in regions are very corrupt.
The people who have been deployed in eastern Uganda, northern Uganda.
Yes, I'm calling from northern Uganda.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me. She was going to respond to you, sir, and of course she understands the people who have been deployed all over, and she has everything on the fingertips. I think she understands her job like the back of her hand. Let me just take another caller. Hello.
Yes, please.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm called Paul.
Paul, where are you calling from, sir?
Hello?
So go right ahead, Paul, and tell us. Don't mind about the echo.
I'm calling from Ginger.
Okay.
There are instances whereby some cases are being investigated by the IGG, but they take quite a lot of time.
Okay.
Whereby it goes to around 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
And then similar cases come in of the same nature.
And they are dealt with expeditiously.
they have not even kicked off.
Oh, okay.
What would happen for such incidences? And they are from the same institution.
Thank you very much, our caller from Ginger. I am going to take one more. In the interest of time, I cannot go beyond 3 calls. I have another caller online. Hello. Okay. Looks like we're having a technical issue there. All right. Maybe, my lord, you could respond to those, and then we shall be making our concluding remarks after that.
I would like to thank those that have raised questions about the institution of the Inspectorate of Government. First of all, we have systems of dealing with complaints about corruption of officers of the Inspectorate of Government. We have an internal inspection unit which carries out investigations over officers that are implicated, or officers who are alleged to be corrupt. Now, if you sit in northern Uganda and tell us on television that there are officers of the Inspectorate of Government who are corrupt, when you have not taken the trouble to report to the Inspectorate of Government or the Inspector General and given them the facts of the alleged corruption, then you are not helping the fight against corruption. And we are calling upon Ugandans. When you have a genuine complaint about an officer of the Inspectorate of Government, please report to the Inspectorate of Government, and we shall carry out an investigation on the basis of the evidence or on the basis of the complaint that you present to us. My brother from Jinja, who is complaining about delay in cases being investigated or no action being taken about a case, again, I would like to call upon you to please raise the specific cases that you are complaining about, so that we can look into them and see whether they are really such cases or whether they were never investigated for a cause. But if you bring up those issues online, I'm now sitting in a studio, how am I going to know the circumstances under which a case was not investigated? I think Ugandans should know that unlike many other institutions in the country, the Inspectorate has a complaints handling mechanism for officers of the Inspectorate of Government. We investigate our own, and where they are found corrupt, we prosecute them. And where they are convicted, they go and serve sentences in the prisons, just like any other Ugandan. So I would like to call upon you, if you have a genuine complaint about an officer of the Inspectorate of Government, please do report to me. The Inspectorate has a website, www.igg.go.ug. We also have on that website, we have telephone numbers that you can call to complain about the officers of the Inspectorate of Government. But if a complaint is nebulous, like the ones I'm receiving on television, I cannot deal with it. So I would like to call upon my 2 brothers. Those cases that you are talking about, please write to the IGG, send us a letter, and we shall carry out an investigation.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Nyapendi, what's going to be your concluding remark?
My concluding remarks, it's been nice being on air to talk to the nation about anti-corruption. Please participate in what we do. We have a website as well, www.oag.go.ug. We have an email, info@oag.go.ug. We have a call line, 041-733-6000. Please call us and participate in the fight against corruption. We want to use information that you have. We we use that information to feed into the plans that we use to execute the audits. Please be with us.
Okay. What's going to be your parting shot, Mr. Patrick?
Thank you, Patrick. I think the fight against corruption can only be won if it is full participation of the ordinary citizens, and we need to do prevention rather than post-mortem of corruption cases. And if that is done, we shall have done a good job in the fight about corruption.
Your concluding remark, Justice Irene.
The Inspectorate of Government and the other anti-corruption agencies will be commemorating the International Anti-Corruption Day, which normally takes place on the 9th of December every year. It's a day that was designated by the United Nations General Assembly under the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. It's a day when we look at our successes as anti-corruption agencies, as nations that are states parties. It's the day when we look at challenges, and right now we've had this anti-corruption week, we've had a campaign that has lasted since September and is going to be concluded on the 10th. Not the 9th, because the 9th will be a Sunday. It will be concluded on the 10th of December. And on that day, the President of Uganda will be launching his unit, which is a personal initiative in the fight against corruption. It's a unit attached to State House. He will be launching it. After that, he will address the nation at the ceremonial grounds in Kololo. We invite all Ugandans to come and listen to His Excellency the President as he addresses the nation on the plans that the government of Uganda has in the fight, that has to address the fight against corruption. He appreciates the facts that most Ugandans are frustrated in this fight against corruption. They do not know what to do and are angry, so he wants to address the issue. We as anti-corruption agencies, the Office of the Auditor General, Inspectorate of Government, CIID, PPDA, and the Financial Intelligence Authority will be there to showcase what we are doing in the fight against corruption. So we invite all Ugandans that are able to please come and join us at the ceremonial grounds in Kololo. The function will start, the gates will start opening at 10 o'clock, but the official time is 12 o'clock, when we will receive Ugandans to listen to His Excellency's address to the nation on corruption and anti-corruption efforts.
Thank you very much, Justice Irene Mulyagonja. Thank you very much, Mrs. Keto Nyapendi. And thank you very much, Mr. Patrick. Members and all of you who have been a part of this. You have heard about the President's address that will be coming on the 10th of December and addressing corruption and maladministration during the commemoration of the Anti-Corruption Day on that day. So please be there, or perhaps you can catch it. I'm sure it will be carried live on all the channels around, and we have quite a number of them in this country. And the theme for this year's Corruption Week is Citizens' Participation in the Fight Against Corruption, a Sustainable Path to Uganda's Transformation. So be a part of that. I suppose if we work, you and I, and alongside the other anti-corruption agencies, and you be the watchtower and be the listening post, perhaps we can take down the Hydra and this phoenix will go down forever. Good night and God bless Uganda.
NTV, turning on your world.